Oh boy, I don't think I'm going to make any new fans with this, but guys, I liked Halloween 5 better than Halloween 4. Welcome back to the Haunted Beard. Well, today I am talking about Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. So, as it's been with the majority of these, with the exception of the first film, this is my first time watching this movie. Halloween 5 came out the year after Halloween 4 in 1989, and it continues more or less the same story that was set up in the previous film. We continue to follow Jamie. As a matter of fact, the film kind of does something similar that part 2 does with part 1 by sort of recapping the last couple of minutes of the end of part 4 into part 5. We find out that Michael, of course, doesn't die. He instead falls down a mine shaft and crawls to safety down a river and ends up finding some guy who lives out in the backwoods who I guess kind of tends to him and takes care of him for the next year and sort of leads him back to health. So the movie kind of establishes that and then quickly jumps ahead 1 year. We find out that Michael Myers' niece, Jamie, who is again played by Danielle Harris, is now in the hospital and she is a mute. And so, of course, Michael Myers comes back once again to wreak havoc on the town of Haddonfield, and that is the main story for part 5. So, how does this one hold up? This film, pretty early on, really kind of establishes the sort of connection or link between Jamie and Myers, and she more or less can kind of sense his presence and his movements and is able to kind of detect sort of where he is to a degree and what he's up to. And this makes for her having some kind of, you know, psychotic episodes. And first of all, I just got to say, I think Danielle Harris in this movie is pretty solid, and she's one of the highlights of it for me. I think she's even better here than she was in part 4. And for the first, I think roughly half-ish or so of the movie, she's totally mute, so everything has to be just conveyed in her body language and facial expressions and things like that. And for somebody who was, I think, 8 or 9 years old at the time, I think she gives a really solid performance here for just kind of the emotions and the range of emotions that she has to portray. I thought she was believable, and I thought she did a really solid job. One of the other things that I liked quite a bit here is that I feel that they kind of got back a little bit to some of the techniques that made the first two films work so well. We get more shots of Myers kind of lurking in the background where he's watching, he's behind the characters and they don't know. And it just, I think, helps kind of give this sort of uneasy, on edge sort of feeling that he's this presence who's always lurking even when nobody knows he's there. Now, I do have a bit of a critique that's kind of attached to that compliment, I guess, and that is, if memory serves, and don't hold me to this exactly, but I feel like this may be the first time we really see Myers walking around in broad daylight. And it it kind of hurts the believability a little bit because first off, you're in the first film, you're able to kind of believe him walking around on Halloween night and nobody knows who he is at that point. And we do see him in the daylight as well in the first film, but nobody knows who he is at that point. And so, you know, it's Halloween. They just think it's a guy in a mask. And so even though, as I kind of stand corrected, we do see him in the daylight in the first film, it makes sense. Well, with this film and the history that has come in Haddonfield prior to that, I just find it hard to believe that nobody's going to notice Myers walking around in broad daylight, even though it is Halloween. I just feel like you kind of have a harder time believing that somebody's going to be like, "Hey, isn't that the guy who like murdered half the town?" So, but I do appreciate that they kind of got back to some of them techniques that I felt worked well in the first couple movies. This movie also adds a little bit of a mysterious element. One of the criticisms I had with the last movie was that it just got to the point to where we were just so formulaic and basic with the story. And really we are again with this one. But they added a little something that I think added at least a little bit of intrigue and mystery, and that is, I guess I can only really describe him as the character in black. And there's a handful of times in this movie where we will kind of leave the main action and focus on this character in black. And what we see is that there is some connection between him and Myers. Early on, they show there's a shot of Myers' wrist, and he's got this tattoo right here on his wrist. Looks like the letter P. I don't know what it is, but we also find out that the character in black also has that. And so there's some sort of connection there, and it just kind of adds a little bit of an element, again, of mystery, of intrigue, of that maybe there's something a little bit else going on than just simply Myers going around town murdering people and Loomis trying to stop him and Jamie kind of in the mix of all of it. So I just kind of liked that element, that there was a little something extra there to kind of add a little layer of mystery. I feel like this is the first time they have intentionally introduced a bit of like a comedic sort of element. And that is with the couple of cops that are introduced, and they kind of come back during a couple scenes, and this, judged by the music even just that's playing when we're first introduced to them, these guys are complete and total goofballs. And so it seems like, at least for the first time, there is some sort of truly intentional sort of comedic relief, or whatever you want to call it, added to this movie.
All clear.
Nothing above, nothing below.
What about Max?
Adobe, right?
This is not happening to me. Max! Max, what have you done? I'm so embarrassed.
It's what we're here for.
Rescue cats.
Find dogs.
That's a job.
And we love it.
Now, let's talk about the kills, because probably my main issue with why I didn't like Halloween 4 was I just thought the kills were so tame. Well, the kills in Halloween 5, in my opinion, are so much better, and I think quite good. They're one of the highlights of this movie for me. First off, let's talk about, I think, maybe my favorite kill in the movie, and that's Mikey's kill. So this guy's established right from the get-go. You know, he's a rebel. He's a bad boy. He's a tough guy, and he's also a bit of a tool. And you know, he's driving around in his hot rod, right? And one of his buddies taps on the dash, or the hood of the car, and you know, he grabs him by the neck and is like, "Don't touch my car." And of course, he's sitting in his car, right? And Myers comes up with a pitchfork, or I think it's a pitchfork, and scratches a big old thing on the back of his car, and it just sends him over the edge. And I had a big old smile on my face, because I was like, that's the perfect setup for this guy, because all he cares about is his car more than anything else. And he thinks he's getting ready to go kick this guy's butt, but he has no idea what's coming for him. And, you know, of course, Myers is there, he grabs him by the neck, and this guy gets a straight up pitchfork to the face, and we just get some good bloody goodness out of this. So I liked it.
Okay, asshole. You wanna play? Trick or treat!
Another kill that I liked is the kill that happens in the barn with Samantha and Spitz. They leave the party, go off by themselves in the barn. They start, you know, getting a little frisky, and Michael Myers is lurking around. There's kind of actually a handful, a bunch of sort of fake out moments where Spitz actually has a Myers mask, and he fakes out Tina and Samantha a couple times, that I thought actually kind of worked pretty well leading up to the kill. And then him and Samantha are going at it, and Myers comes over and pitchfork again, but I thought it was really good. Nice little kill. I liked it. There's some other fun scenes in this movie where Tina ends up getting in the car with Mike Myers. She doesn't know that he just killed her boyfriend, so she gets in the car with him thinking it's him. That's kind of a fun scene. There's a fun little car chase scene later on where Myers is chasing Jamie through the woods a little bit that I thought worked pretty well, even if it is a little ridiculous, but it's fun. And now I know from I've watched people's reviews on this movie, and one of the major issues or criticisms people have with this movie is Tina. And yes, I'll admit she is a little bit annoying. But I guess my expectations were set that she was going to be the absolute worst ever, and I didn't think overall she was that bad. Yeah, she has her annoying moments, but I thought overall she wasn't too terrible. And so it didn't hurt the movie for me too much. Some critiques I would make, I was kind of bummed that they ended up killing off Rachel's character so soon, and you don't really find out officially until the end, but you know, she's not in really the vast majority of the movie. Just from a technical standpoint, I noticed there's a few audio issues in spots where some of the dubbing is the audio and video aren't synced up, or there's some weird kind of dubbing that they clearly did in post, and it just looks a little awkward. So those are kind of more minor things. But another thing that I thought was kind of odd is for a good chunk of the movie. Loomis is trying to get Jamie to help him get Myers, to help him finally capture Myers, and she just kind of continually refuses and doesn't help him. And it isn't until later on, it's like 70 minutes in the movie, where she just survived an attack involving that car chase that I mentioned, where she finally changes her mind and is like, okay, I'm going to help you. And it just was kind of weird to me that, like, she's obviously terrified of Myers. She wants to, you know, to kill him or stop him. And why did it take so long for her to just finally decide that she was going to help Loomis? And so I thought that was kind of just a weird thing. There's not really any sort of explanation for that. And so that was just one of the issues, another one of the issues that I had. In mentioning Jamie, though, there is, I thought, a pretty cool scene later on in the film where she is in the old Myers house, and Michael's chasing her through, and there's a scene involving a laundry chute where there's some cool camera work and a couple cool shots that I really liked, and I just thought it was a really effective and fun, thrilling scene. And just another one, there's a handful of, I think, just pretty solid scenes in this movie that just work pretty well that I enjoyed, and the laundry chute scene was definitely one of them. It's good stuff. Another one of the aspects of the film that I had a little bit of an issue with that didn't quite make sense to me was in regards to sort of Loomis's plan to finally put an end to Myers, right? And there's a point where Jamie asks him, like, you know, are you going to kill him? Are you going to stop him? And he's like, yeah, I think I can. And it's like, I'm kind of like, you know, I was wondering, what's his plan? Like, is he going to just try to shoot him again? Because clearly that doesn't work. This guy has taken however many bullet shots to the chest and the head now and still, you know, survived. And there's finally this confrontation where you know, Myers and Loomis are kind of standing toe to toe. And Loomis has this idea that Jamie is somehow going to cure his inner rage, and that the girl is going to save him. And I guess it's kind of a unique idea in a way that, like, again, he doesn't just resort to violence, but like it's kind of just sort of randomly thrown in that, like, all of a sudden he just gets this idea that Jamie is going to cure his rage and put an end to Michael Myers. I don't really know kind of where that came from or how he came up with that or whatever, but it was just kind of it just sort of, I don't know, they didn't really explain that, or it was just kind of random. I don't know, it just didn't really work for me all that well. Let's talk about the ending, and the ending for me is a bit of a mixed bag. They capture Myers, they put him in prison, they're waiting for the National Guard to come pick him up and transfer him out of jail, and the man in black shows up at the police station, and he goes in there and shoots all the cops to get Myers out, and we get this really kind of cheap scene, this one shot of the man in black just firing his gun a bunch of times, and all we hear is just everything over the radio. And it was like, you could kind of tell that it was like they either had like a limited budget or were just out of time or something. But you can just tell it's kind of a really quickly, cheaply put together scene. However, we do get a pretty cool sequence directly after that where we follow Jamie into the police station as she's going to investigate what's happening, and we get kind of this cool tracking shot as she's going through the hallways of the police, and we just see the aftermath of all these dead police officers and everything. And then she finally gets to the jail cell, and we see, of course, Michael has been busted out of jail and he survives once again. So which obviously sets us up for Halloween 6. So those are just some of my thoughts. Overall, and maybe it was just because of expectations, that my expectations were like at, dead zero, but I actually had a pretty decent time with this movie. Surprised to say, like I said, I know it may be controversial, but I liked it more than part 4. So crazy. I don't know what to tell you, but I got to be honest, and that's what I think. So with all that being said, I'm actually going to give, I think, Halloween 5, I'm going to go with a 6 out of 10 for Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. So those are my thoughts, and up next is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, and we will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.